Walk this quiet South Dakota grassland, and you would never guess what it was built to do. For 3 decades, a nuclear missile with more destructive power than every bomb dropped in the Second World War sat in the ground here, awake, fueled, and ready to fly in minutes. There was no fence for hundreds of miles that could tell you where the Cold War lived. It lived here, under the wheat grass and the meadowlarks, behind a plain chain link gate off the interstate. Today we are walking one of the strangest national park sites in America, the only one dedicated to the Cold War itself. This is Minuteman Missile National Historic Site. We are in southwestern South Dakota, on the high plains just north of Badlands National Park. The historic site is not one place but 3, strung along Interstate 90 like beads on a wire. There is a visitor center at exit 131, a launch control facility called Delta 1 at exit 127, and a missile silo called Delta 9 at exit 116, about 6 miles from the town of Wall. Millions of travelers pass these exits every year on their way to the Badlands and the Black Hills. For 30 years, almost none of them knew what was buried beside the highway. What strikes you first is how ordinary it all looks. This is working ranch country, a sea of mixed grass prairie rolling to the horizon in every direction. The wind never really stops out here, and on a June morning the whole landscape hums with insects and birdsong. There are no guard towers, no concrete ramparts, nothing that says arsenal. That ordinariness was not an accident. It was the whole idea. This is the mixed grass prairie, the great middle carpet of the continent, where the tall grasses of the east shade into the short bunch grasses of the dry west. The visitor center itself stands on land that was part of Buffalo Gap National Grassland, a patchwork of public range recovered from the homestead busts of the last century. Pronghorn, prairie dogs, and grassland birds still work these flats the way they did long before the missiles came. Summer brings hail and sudden thunderstorms. Winter brings blizzards that close the interstate. It is a hard, open, honest country, and for a generation it doubled as the front line of a global standoff. Look at the ground here and you start to read the site the way the Air Force meant it to be read, which is to say, barely at all. A missile silo needed only about 2 acres, a gravel pad, a few antennas, and a fence. From the road it could pass for a well pump or a small substation. Ranchers cut hay right up to the fence lines, and cattle grazed against the wire. The deadliest real estate in America looked like the most boring. Just south of here, the prairie suddenly falls away into the Badlands, a maze of banded buttes and spires carved from ancient sediments by 500,000 years of erosion. The Lakota, whose homeland this is, called the country Makosika, meaning bad lands, a name French trappers and every mapmaker since have simply translated. The missile fields were laid out across the tablelands north of that painted wall of rock. Visitors drove past on their way to one of the most famous landscapes in America. Few of them registered the small fenced squares in the grass along the way. To understand why the missiles came here, you have to picture the world after 1945. Two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, faced each other across the globe with weapons no one had ever possessed before. By the late 1950s, both sides were racing to build rockets that could cross oceans and continents in under an hour. The logic was called deterrence. If each side could destroy the other no matter who struck first, then neither side would ever dare to strike. It was peace balanced on a knife edge, and it needed somewhere remote, stable, and vast to stand. Stand here and consider the arithmetic that governed this place. A missile rising out of this prairie could reach a target on the far side of the world in about 30 minutes. That number ruled everything: the design of the silos, the training of the crews, the sleep of presidents. 30 minutes was the length of a lunch break, and it was also the width of the line between an ordinary Tuesday and the end of the modern world. The people who worked here lived inside that number for 30 years. The weapon itself was called the Minuteman, named for the colonial militiamen of the Revolutionary War who stood ready to fight at a minute's notice. The name was earned. Earlier rockets burned liquid fuels that took precious time to load, but the Minuteman burned solid fuel, cast into its stages like wax in a candle, so it could stand ready for years and launch in about a minute. It first entered service in 1962. The version deployed here, the Minuteman II, could fly some 6,300 miles and carried a single warhead with a yield of 1.2 megatons. That is roughly 80 times the power of the Hiroshima bomb, riding on a machine the height of a 6-story building. This unassuming spot is Delta 9, a launch facility finished in 1963. The silo below is a concrete tube 12 feet across and 80 feet deep, a well shaft for the end of the world. For decades, a Minuteman stood inside it, tended by maintenance crews who came and went in pickup trucks like any other rural trade. There was no one stationed here. The missile waited alone, checked electronically from miles away, patient as the prairie itself. Picture the ground beneath the site in cross-section. At the surface sat a launcher closure door, a slab of concrete and steel weighing 90 tons, built to be blown clear in seconds. Below it, the launch tube dropped 80 feet, the missile suspended inside on a shock isolation system so that even a nearby nuclear blast might not knock it offline. Around the tube ran equipment rooms packed with power, guidance, and communications gear. The whole structure was hardened, buried, and duplicated across the plains, so that no single enemy strike could silence the field. The missile fields went into the ground with astonishing speed in the early 1960s. Construction crews swarmed across western South Dakota, boring shafts, pouring concrete, and stringing buried cables between sites scattered across the grasslands. Whole convoys of trucks rolled out of Rapid City as contractors raced the calendar and the weather. Local men found steady wages in the work, and small towns felt the boom. In a matter of a few years, a landscape of ranches quietly became one of the most heavily armed places on Earth. The Air Force did not seize the planes. It bought them 2 acres at a time. Each silo and control site sat on a small parcel carved from a working ranch, purchased or condemned from families who mostly stayed right where they were. A rancher might fix fence in the morning within sight of a nuclear missile and never once see it. The government plowed its cables through pastures and paid for the privilege. It was the strangest kind of neighbor, silent, fenced, and apocalyptic. Families who lived among the missiles developed a matter-of-fact peace with them. Children rode school buses past silo gates, and combines worked the fields alongside the fences. Some locals took comfort in the missiles, reasoning that they were being defended, while others understood that the silos also made the prairie a target. Air Force security teams and ranchers waved to each other on gravel roads. For 3 decades, that was the daily texture of the Cold War here, not drama, but coexistence. The Minuteman era began at the most dangerous moment of the whole standoff. In October 1962, American reconnaissance found Soviet missiles in Cuba, and the world spent 13 days closer to nuclear war than it has ever been. As the crisis peaked, the very first Minuteman missiles in Montana were rushed onto alert. President Kennedy is said to have called the new missile his ace in the hole. The crisis passed, but the lessons stuck, and the missile fields of the Great Plains grew with extraordinary speed in the years that followed. Everything you see here belonged to the 44th Missile Wing, headquartered at Ellsworth Air Force Base near Rapid City. The wing controlled 150 Minuteman missiles and 15 launch control centers, spread across more than 13,500 square miles of southwestern South Dakota. That is an arsenal the size of a small country, dissolved invisibly into ranch land. Each cluster of 10 missiles answered to one buried control center. Delta 1 and Delta 9, the 2 sites preserved today, were one small corner of that enormous hidden machine. And South Dakota was only one panel of the quilt. By the 1970s, 1,000 Minuteman missiles stood on alert beneath the Great Plains, spread across missile fields in Montana, the Dakotas, Wyoming, Colorado, Nebraska, and Missouri. The heartland was chosen deliberately, far from the coasts, sparsely peopled and geologically stable. The same soil that grew wheat and cattle now held the largest land-based nuclear force in American history. Most Americans never saw a single one. A few exits up the interstate stands Delta 1, and from the road it could be a modest ranch house with outbuildings and an antenna. Topside it held a day room, a kitchen, and bunks for the security and support staff who kept the place running. But the building was only the porch light. An elevator dropped 31 feet down a shaft to the real heart of the site. Down there, behind a blast door, 2 Air Force officers sat with the keys to a nuclear arsenal. The underground launch control center was a room like no other. An egg-shaped steel capsule hung on shock absorbers inside a concrete vault. Inside were consoles, radios, a small bed, and 2 chairs bolted to rails, facing panels of switches and status lights. The capsule was built to ride out a nearby nuclear strike and keep functioning while the world above it burned. From this room, the two officers monitored 10 missiles scattered in the surrounding grasslands. It was a submarine buried in the prairie. The crews were called missileers, and theirs may be the strangest job description of the 20th century. Two officers rode the elevator down for an alert shift of roughly 24 hours, sealed behind a blast door with checklists, coffee, and each other. The launch procedure required both of them, turning two keys at consoles set too far apart for any one person to reach both. Most shifts passed in studying, paperwork, and boredom. Every shift carried the possibility that the next message decoded would be the one that ended everything. People cope with unimaginable jobs in very human ways, and the missileers cope with paint. Crews decorated their blast doors and capsules with murals and slogans, Gallows Humor 31 feet underground. They knew better than anyone what the machinery around them could do. Humor was armor, the same as the concrete, and one blast door in this missile field became the most famous joke of the entire Cold War. On the blast door at Delta One, a crew painted a parody of a pizza company's famous promise. The mural shows a delivery box styled like the Domino's logo, and the slogan reads, "Worldwide delivery in 30 minutes or less, or your next one is free." The joke, of course, is exact. 30 minutes was the real delivery time of a Minuteman missile to the far side of the planet. The door still bears the mural today, preserved by the National Park Service, deadpan and chilling at once. It may be the darkest punchline in the entire national park system. Through the 1970s and 80s, the South Dakota field soldiered on through the long middle age of the Cold War. The wing operated the improved Minuteman II, with better range, better accuracy, and hardened electronics. Crews rotated down the elevator shaft day after day, year after year, through détente, through renewed tensions, through the arms buildups of the 80s. Nothing ever launched. That was the point. The system worked precisely because it was never used. Life above the silos carried on with wonderful indifference. 6 miles from Delta 9, the town of Wall kept serving free ice water at Wall Drug, the roadside emporium that made itself famous with hand-painted highway signs beginning in the 1930s. Tourists streamed past on Interstate 90, bound for the Badlands, Mount Rushmore, and the Black Hills. They bought jackalope postcards within walking distance of a thermonuclear warhead. No other stretch of American highway has ever packed so much apocalypse and so much kitsch into the same few miles. That contrast is the soul of this landscape. Roadside America at its most cheerful, billboards promising 5-cent coffee and animatronic cowboys, laid directly over the infrastructure of mutual assured destruction. Families posed for photos while, under the same horizon, missileers ran through their checklists. The Cold War here was not a distant abstraction. It was a neighbor with a gravel driveway, and almost nobody driving through had any idea. Then, with startling speed, the standoff ended. In July 1991, President George Bush and Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev signed the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, the first agreement to actually shrink the superpower arsenals rather than merely cap them. Months later, the Soviet Union itself dissolved. The weapons built for a 40-year confrontation suddenly belonged to history, and the treaty reached all the way to the grass of Jackson County, South Dakota. The order came quickly. The Minuteman II force would stand down. Crews took the South Dakota missiles off alert, and one by one the weapons came out of the ground. In 1994, the 44th Missile Wing was inactivated, ending more than 3 decades of continuous alert on this prairie. The elevators stopped running at the control sites. After 30 years of holding its breath, the grassland exhaled. Under the treaty's terms, the silos themselves had to die in a way satellites could witness. Across the missile field, crews stripped the launch facilities and imploded them, collapsing the concrete tubes and grading the prairie smooth over the rubble. Site after site vanished back into pasture, 150 wells of the apocalypse filled in like old graves. But 2 places were deliberately spared for history. Delta 1 kept its capsule, and Delta 9 kept its silo. At Delta 9, the 90-ton launcher door was rolled partly open and welded permanently to its rails, so that treaty verification satellites could look straight down the tube and confirm it was harmless. Then the opening was capped with a glass viewing enclosure. Stand at the rail today, and you look down at a disarmed Minuteman II missile, resting in its tube like a museum specimen in a bell jar. It is one of the most surreal views in any American park. A weapon built to fly 6,000 miles now travels nowhere, on permanent display to the sky that once feared it. In November 1999, Congress authorized Minuteman Missile National Historic Site, the only unit of the national park system dedicated to the Cold War. Park rangers now lead small groups down the original elevator at Delta 1, 6 visitors at a time, into the capsule where the keys once waited. The visitor center at exit 131 tells the story of the missiles, the crews, and the ranch families who lived among them. It is a park not of scenery but of memory. The subject it preserves is the closest humanity has come to destroying itself, and the strange machinery of restraint that prevented it. The story is not entirely past tense. 400 Minuteman III missiles still stand alert today under the plains of Montana, North Dakota, Wyoming, Colorado, and Nebraska, the working descendants of the weapon in the glass case here. South Dakota's field is grass again, meadowlarks singing from fence posts that once carried warning signs. What remains here is the question the whole site quietly asks: how close did we come, and what kept the missiles sleeping? The prairie, as always, keeps its own counsel. Minuteman Missile National Historic Site is a small walk through an enormous story, 3 modest stops on an interstate that hide the pivot point of the 20th century. Come for the Badlands next door, but stop here too, and stand a while over the silo under glass. Few places on Earth let you look history that squarely in the eye. Thank you for watching. Follow for more of the trails of the world.